Hello everyone and welcome to Gitsapalooza. I've been wanting to do a hobby time video for quite some time as I just went through a rush of terrain building activity getting ready for Adepticon, and I learned some lessons that I thought I would pass on. One of the things that you may or may not know about the Risen Sun rule set, that will be the next rule set that should be coming out by Gen Con, is that we're probably going to have to add more obscuring but not line of sight blocking terrain to our tables, and that's because in the next rule set you don't benefit from cover for archery, for example, unless you're within 1 inch of the piece of terrain that is giving you cover. So for example, if Zuba were hanging out back here and this Kami was trying to shoot at him from here, the Kami could shoot at Zuba and Zuba would not count as being in cover. He would not get the benefit of cover because he's more than 1 inch away from the logs that are obscuring him. Vice versa, if Zuba, let's say, had a ranged attack and was taking his hammer to throw it like Thor at the Kami would benefit from being in cover because it is within 1 inch of the terrain. So, that being said, we're probably going to need to put some more pieces of cover like this on our boards just to make sure that it's an even playing field. I certainly wouldn't completely litter it because then you make archers completely useless, which wouldn't be fun either. So you're trying to find that happy medium. Well, anyway, one of the pieces of terrain that I cooked up for Adepticon that was cheap and easy to make and looked really good when I was done were these little logs. I live in the woods here in Wisconsin in the United States, and I do a lot of walking around in the woods throughout my life, and it is very common to see these big old logs of trees that have fallen down, knocked down by storms, or just fallen down from age, and they're slowly rotting away in the woods. So I thought, wow, I can go out and get some sticks for free from my yard and break them up, and then I flatten the bottoms so that they lie flat. There's a number of ways you can do this. I happen to have a bandsaw. However, it is not a super expensive bandsaw. It's a super cheap bandsaw from a company called Harbor Freight, which gets most of its stuff from China. And this little bandsaw has worked perfectly for 20 years for 40 bucks. And it sits on a tabletop. It's not a big stand-up thing. It's a little thing that sits on a bench. So you could, however, if you had a power sander, you could do the same thing with a power sander, or you could even split them like you would split a piece of firewood. So I would break it up first into smaller chunks and then just put a hatchet on one and take a stick of wood that's like a small chunk of wood and boom the back of the hatchet, and it should split it right open. Anyway, when you're done, they lay flat. They don't have to lay perfectly flat. This one doesn't, but in game terms, nobody's going to know or care. And if it really bothers me, I'll just add little bits of plastic or something short up under there where nobody can see it. So you could use these as is and you'd be good. They'd be perfectly legitimate. However, usually when you see rotting pieces of wood in the forest, especially the northern forests, whether you're east, west, or central, anywhere where it's a little wetter, you see a lot of growth on them. And certainly Japan would fall into this category. So you'd see moss, you see ferns, you'd see fungi. Unfortunately, I don't have any fungi. I'd love some. I know the company to get them too. I just don't want to pay. Just too cheap to pay for it. Maybe I'll make my own someday. Anyway, so you just decorate the tops, in effect, with whatever greenery you want. You can see here, I've got flowers. I've got ferns. The ferns come from a company in Germany that makes them for model railroading. They are not cheap. You can buy them, you get about 9 for 10 bucks. However, they are really well made and really worth it, in my opinion. I'm not making a whole field of ferns. I'm just using them one here, one there as special highlight pieces, and boy, do they do the trick. They also make some vines, so I've got a vine that I can stick into one. I like these vines because this zigzag is kind of a wire, so you can bend them and they'll stay to shape. There's the Chinese company that makes these little guys and these and the palm trees you've probably seen. You can certainly use any of those. You have to think about what would be growing out of a rotting log. I think this is supposed to be a cycad of some sort, but in the context of the way I'm going to use it, it's not going to matter. Little tufts of grass, you could certainly have little shrubby things growing out of the top of a rotting log. I even have my last 3 pieces of bamboo. Not that I would anticipate bamboo growing directly out of a rotting log, but you could have it. I would drill a little hole just into the very edge so I had something to attach it to glue that would hold it, and then I would cut almost the whole stem off and just have little chunks like it was a new sprouting of bamboo coming up next to the log. Maybe the degradation of the log is what has encouraged it to start to grow. Anyway, so you just get a variety of stuff, and then I'd put moss on the top, and for moss I just use Woodland Scenics blended turf. They have a bunch of colors. It is cheap for how much you get. Think about what you spend with one of these other companies for their turf in this tiny little jar, and then here you get this giant thing of blended turf. I think the current price is around $13 because I just bought some snow. So for my winter board, I have these also have logs like this, except they have snow on top. And the bigger a thing it comes in, the more economical it is. That's not always the case in our, but by and large, it is certainly true with hobby supplies. If you're buying hobby supplies from a specialist provider in small quantities, you are going to pay a lot more than if you buy it. The model railroading industry is huge compared to the gaming industry. The companies have been in it a lot longer. The guys who need scenic stuff need it for huge tables, so they need it in large quantities. Thus, it is priced to be sold in large quantities. So that's where you go. All right, so I'm going to walk you through it. I'm just going to do all 3 pieces here. There's going to be a break in the middle. The first thing I'm going to do is put the moss on, because I can put everything else on top of the moss. If I need to drill holes, I can drill right through the moss. But if I put the other things on and then have to try to get the moss underneath the fronds or whatever, it's a pain in the butt. So I'm just going to put the moss on first, and then we'll go from there. So what I'm going to do is I'll put the moss on, and then I'll cut the camera for a while, and then we'll come back and see what it looks like once the moss is on. So if you'll forgive me for a minute, I'm going to move stuff around. My hands are probably going to get in the way, but I'm going to set this up so I can show you how I put the moss on. It is an absolute no-brainer. Does not take any intelligence or time or skill, which makes it a perfect activity for me. So I have my Woodland Scenics blended turf. I have my 3 pieces of wood. Now I use 2 glues generally when I'm basing. This Superjet is my favorite super glue type glue. Of course, there are a million different kinds. This one's medium viscosity. They've got a thicker one, a thinner one. I just like the medium. I just like the way this functions better than any other super glue I've ever tried. However, it is not good really for putting down large blobs of things like a covering of turf. It dries too quickly. It penetrates and then it dries, and but it just doesn't hold the volume of material that I want it to hold when I'm doing a solid coating or something. So I will use it, for example, for helping to adhere these things to the log, but I won't use it for the turf. What I do use for the turf is just regular old white Elmer's glue. Elmer's just the brand, but you guys know, just the white glue. So it takes a while to dry, but it is easy to work with. You can get it on your hands. It's no big deal. Actually, I get it on my hands on purpose because I use my fingers to spread it, and it just works great. So that's what we'll be using. So I'm going to open up the glue bottle. There we go. I'm going to open up the shaker on the turf, and then I'm going to go over these just briefly and make sure that, like, these extra little odds and ends, Now you can use these, I actually like using these with the bark still on them, but as with most decaying wood, the problem is the bark eventually comes off. I have glued the bark back on, so I've had like a section like this, and I had a section of bark, and when I was working with it, the bark came off. I just put glue on it, put it right back on again. So, and that's it. That's all we are. So here's our 3 logs. I might as well just start on this one. So what I'm going to do, and I'm going to apply the glue to all 3, and then I'm going to put the moss, the turf on all 3, and then we're going to sit and we'll be back to see what I do next. I don't usually cover every inch of surface with the moss. Things are more dynamic, they're more interesting if there's a mix of textures and a mix of colors. So let's just start. So this is very simple. All I'm going to do is run a pretty healthy bead of glue right along the side of this. I'll put some over here, put a little there, and a little over here. And that's it. Actually, I'm going to run all my beads of glue. Pardon me, guys. So we're going to put some along here, and then I'd say maybe some down here. So I'm just looking at the logs and figuring, all right, the upper surfaces are where it's going to go, or if it's moist, somewhere where to accumulate moisture, or is there a little shelf? You know, just pretty much anywhere, even up there. Okay, so we have our glue in a bead. Now I want to take this and spread it out a little bit, and to do that I will just use my finger. I don't want to spread it too thin because I want it to penetrate up into the foam. The turf is just foam, so I like having some disconnected points. So not every point needs to connect with everything else. And I'll even put a little bit up there. There we go. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm just going to spread this out. And then you want to do it kind of irregularly. Leave some open gaps. There we go. There's log number 2. Log number 3. Draw that out a little bit. You can, you know, from a biological standpoint, you can spread this out as much as you want. Mostly the moss, because it's photosynthesizing, will be on the vertical surfaces. But I just think it's more interesting if it's a little haphazard. So now that I have the glue out where I want, I'm just going to move all 3 together. Wipe my fingers off on the paper towel. And then this is otherwise clean, so I can recoup my... Oh, you know what? I'm going to pull some of these down just a little bit. Just that line is a little too straight. There we go. So then you just take this. I'll do it from the back. Lefty, this ought to be fun. There you go. And you pile it up. You want it to be thick because you want the glue to kind of bleed up into the foam and make a thick coating. If you have some glue on the down edges, you want to make sure you cover all that. All right, so there we go. So the hard part is done. It's all fun and games from this point on, really. Just designing, basically. What looks cool, what feels cool. Where do I want to drill my holes and put my ferns or bamboo or whatever. So I will do the bamboo, and I'll do maybe I'll do like the bamboo on one, because I do have a table that has some bamboo on it, so that's where the rest of it went. And then I'll do the ferns and flowers and the cycad and grass, and I'll do all the rest on the other 2. All right, so we're just going to let this sit for, I don't know, 20 minutes. And then we'll come back, we'll knock the foam off, and we'll see where we are. Oh, one last thing. It can sometimes help to press down a little bit on the foam. Not too rough, just a little bit. I think it helps it seat and come into contact with the glue down below. This works on static grass too, by the way. I don't use my finger for it, but I will, when I'm putting static grass on something, I will take the, yeah, see, and I could see where it was smashing in there a little bit. I take the tweezers that I pick the static grass up with, these guys right here, and I'd pick up a clump of static grass and I'd put it where I want it, and I'll push it down and I'll kind of mash it down with the tweezers. For some reason that seems to help. Usually. I like it better when I do that than when I don't. So that's it. Now you don't want to mess with this until it's dry. Like I said, you want the glue to move up into the foam and grab onto as much of it as possible. So we're going to leave it. We'll see you in a bit. All right, everyone, Gitsapalooza is back. So it's been 20 minutes or so. I've had some coffee, talked to my son. So we'll see. So all I do is I pick these up, turn these over, and gently tap them. And that worked out. I like that. That's pretty much what I was hoping for. Moss covered for the most part, but some bare areas to keep it interesting. It also gives us some bare areas to attach other plants, things like the flowers and such that do better if they're actually attached to the wood as opposed to attached to the moss. Let's take the middle one that's buried here. Take that out. Give it a good tap. Turned out nicely as well. Last but not least, and there we go. So I'm very happy with that. So I'm going to set these aside. Now I want to reuse the flocking. I certainly don't want to give up on that. So, if you'll excuse me while I reach. So there's a couple of ways you can do it. None of them are particularly, I just use, actually it'd be much better if this was, I was pushing this onto a sheet of paper, which would be smooth and wouldn't keep it. I'm going to lose a little bit on the paper towel here, but so I'm just going to push that off on the paper towel, tap it off. I'll even take a part of my arm. I'll take a big fluffy brush and just kind of get as much of it on the paper towel as I can. There we go. And then I will put this here, fold the paper towel. I don't know if you guys, if this is in camera or not, but basically I'm just using the paper towel like a funnel and putting it back. There we go. Piece of cake. All right, back to our pieces of wood. So I don't want to do them all the same way. I'm just going to blow on these to blow off any odds and ends that are still attached that aren't, because I don't want them falling off. All right, I think the hardest thing is going to be working on the bamboo. So that's what I'm going to look at first. So I'm just going to look over each one of these and see if I can pick one out where I think I can easily, you know what, I think I'm going to do the bamboo on this one, and the reason being is this one's kind of tilting, and I think if I drill some holes right along here and then put the bamboo in on that edge, I can stick it down far enough that it will help hold the piece of wood steady. Now I did set up a drill, however the drill bit is pretty wide. Let's see if I can't find a smaller drill bit. Maybe I can't. And I have no idea what I dropped, but I'm sure I'm never going to see it again. Give me just a second while I dig through my stuff to see if I have something that is a huge drill bit. If I can find something a little smaller, a little closer to what I need. Wait. No, that's just a pin. I'm always in pursuit of a proper drill bit. These are all way too small. We may have a brief pause for station identification while I see if I can find an appropriately sized drill bit. Wait a minute. How about this one? That is smaller. Probably still a little on the big side, but definitely closer. If you guys don't know, this tool I'm working with is actually a, basically it's like a Dremel, except it's made for metal workers, for artists and such. They are really handy. Love it. It's got a foot pedal control, so it's so much easier than a Dremel. Lots of power. Bought this years ago when I was doing jewelry work. So all I'm going to do is drop a few holes right through here to kind of hide the fact. Now, of course, I want this terrain piece to work from both directions. So there we go, one more. Since bamboo has a tendency to grow in clumps. All right. There we go. So we have 3 holes where the bamboo will not fit perfectly, but maybe I'll have to make that a little bigger. And maybe I will have to use this big one. I guess I do. Son of a gun. Well, at least I have some pilot holes. So anyway, maybe I'll edit this out, but I probably won't. I think it's, you know, if I'm teaching you guys how to do stuff, it's important to be honest about it, not make it look like it's a flawless process that never needs rethinking. All right, so now I'm just going to very carefully go in and make each of these a little bigger. There we go. Let me move the drill out of the way for the time being. All right. All right, let's see. Okay, I think those will work once I get them trimmed down. So, as I said in the past, I don't want these to be huge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by trimming these way down and get rid of all of that. I'm going to take a little file and I'm going to, this is just plastic around a wire. So all I'm going to do is get rid of some of the extra plastic. I'm going to try to make this round-ish. And that's just to make it fit in the hole. So let's see. Will it fit in the hole? It does. So I'm going to make this the big one. So I'm going to put that in the middle. I'm going to push it down until it contacts the ground. I'm going to bend it back a little bit. There we go. Now this other one, I'm going to make just a little bit shorter. So the last one I cut to about here. So this one I'm going to cut off right at this leaf here. Now it doesn't matter from this point on whether these contact the ground or not, because I'm going to use that one. So there we go. There's number 2. And we'll make this one a little bit shorter yet. And then I need to trim this last leaf just so I can push it in. Sorry, I should turn that. So there's my 3rd hole. See that? See if I can do this from behind. There we go. So now you can just kind of arrange these so they're in a fan. I can push that one down to help support the whole thing if I want. I actually like the fact. Now when I'm bending these, I'm actually using my finger to push on in the back, because if I just bend it, I might put enough pressure to blow this out. So when I was bending, I had a finger back here and I was pushing in to support that. But there we go. So there we have some very cool bamboo, and I think I will put the cycad, since it's kind of also the same feel to it. So I will pick a spot farther down here and we'll stick the cycad in there. Now the cycad could very well be growing out of a rotting log, so I'm just going to put it in the center. And I'm going to kind of do this to widen the hole a little bit because I know that cycad stem is thick. All right, let me have to do more. A little more. It's a little tight. The other thing is if you drill these just right, you don't even need to glue them. They'll just stay in. Okay. I'm going to take a brush, gently remove that sawdust from there so it's less obvious. And we push the cycad in. Oh, it's still a little tight. So we're going to try this one more time. There we are. Let's see how we're doing now. Oh, look at that. That's perfect. So then what I would do is I'd push it in all the way, and then if it was sticking out the bottom, I would just take my flush nippers and cut it off, but it's not. So there we go. So we've got that. I seem to have lost my push here, so I'm gonna just give these a little more downward push so that they're kind of sticking out the bottom, and I'm hoping, there we go. See that sits nice and solid now. So there we go. I could leave it just like that if I wanted. I could add flowers, I could add whatever I wanted to. I don't want to mix metaphors, so to speak, so I'm not going to put like ferns in with those. I want to keep this a little more tropical feeling. So I think I'm going to leave that one just the way it is. I don't think I need much more. I could put a little shrubbery or something in there, but I don't. I actually like that just the way it is. So there we go. So now we have, for example, there we are. There's Zuba now well and truly in cover. And you have a really cool piece to add to your board. All right, so we're done with that one. So let's pick the next one. So I have, the next two are going to share. I picked out 2 ferns. I didn't want to use all my ferns. So I picked out 2 ferns. And just keep in mind, and some flowers and maybe some grass. So and the vine. So the vine is interesting because it needs to be placed early. So what I figured out, not that this is rocket science, but basically you take this last little stretch of vine. I don't know if you guys can see that, but I bent that 90 degrees. So I have something to go in to the piece of wood. And then I'm going to, once again, play magical drill bits. And I love this tool. I have had this for years and years and years, and it is just the best. Let's see. This may be too small. I may need to widen it a bit. I even have a little drill press that goes with this. You just take the handheld part and you put it in a clamp, and you get a nice little drill press action out of it. And because you're using your foot, your hands are free to manipulate. It's just wonderful. Okay, so I want the vine kind of up here and working its way down the log. So this is where I'm going to put the hole. So again, this is all guesswork whether you can see it or not, but we're going to try it. So I want it at pretty close to a 90-degree angle. And I'm doing this very gently so I don't take a chance on destroying my finger or drilling a hole through my thumb. Sorry, I know you can't see that. I apologize. All right, so there is a tiny hole, and there was actually kind of a gap in the wood anyway, so, and then I'm going to test fit it. So I'm just going to put, you know, next time I should do this over my left shoulder, since there's likely to be less interference. There we go. So we've got that in, and I want that, as you see the leaves are kind of sticking up. You can bend it however you want, but I like that. I don't think I'm going to mess with it. So then, this is where the super glue comes in, as opposed to white glue. Is, you can see where that is right there. I will just take a little tiny bit of super glue, flood that area. Hardly needed that much, but that's what came out. Maybe take the tweezers, and there we go, kind of stuff that in there like that. That's really good. Now, if you're impatient, the other advantage of this glue is you can buy accelerant. I happen to like the pump stuff, but I can't find the pump stuff at the moment. So the company stopped making the little pump things, which I actually preferred. So I got more in there than I wanted, so I'm gonna take a paper towel to soak up the extra, and then just hit it with accelerant. Blow on it a little bit. Okay, that's all there is to it. So I put the big elements on first, and then I'll put the little stuff on. So we've got our vine there. We've got flowers we can put in. We've got a fern we can put in. So I'm kind of looking, it's like, all right, where would a fern be? You know, would it be down here maybe? Or, you know, could be just about anywhere. Or where does it need to be to make the terrain element look good? So the vines are kind of pointing in that direction. So maybe I want the fern to point in this direction a little bit so that from this angle it looks interesting. So this should be the last time I change the bit on the drill. So we'll put another, let's see, how big is the fern? Not too big. So we use a smaller one. There we are. Alright, and every once in a while I run it just to check and make sure it's in there straight. Okay, so this bare patch right here is where I'm going to put the fern in. I'm going to put it on a bit of an angle so that it sticks towards the opposite direction. I'm just going to drill all the way through. Alright, check the size. Goes right in. Perfect. So then I'm going to take a little bit of super glue, just put it on the stem of the fern. That's, again, way too much. Sorry, I just dabbed it off on a paper towel. Get rid of the sawdust. Again, push this all the way through. And then, if it came out the bottom, I would trim it off, but it is just the perfect size. So there we go. Now, I like that, but I want a little color, so I'm going to put some flowers on it. Flowers are easy. Now, these, you know, most of these flowers will have adhesive on the bottom, but I don't trust that. So what I usually do is take a random piece of something, plastic. I have plastic bags laying all over the place. And I'll put a little touch of super glue there. So rather than applying it directly to the flowers or applying it directly to the log and making a huge mess, I just put a little bit right there. I think I'm going to put one right in there, that little space. So I look for one that's not too big. I dab it in the super glue. This one even has kind of a flat edge. Now you can see I hold it down and I press it in there. That's because I want it to make really good contact. I take it away and boom, they're my flowers. Now, another option would be if I don't like this hole right here, this gap where the thing goes in, it looks a little awkward. So then I would look for I get a really tiny one. All right, that'll do. So I get a little one. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna see how this kind of elongate, and this is kind of sick looking on this side. So I'm just gonna take little nippers and get rid of the sick looking part. There we go. That didn't do anything. I would normally, at this point, I would get scissors, but I've locked myself away from my scissors. So if you'll pardon me, I'm going to take this off camera and just, there we go. So I just shortened it up a little bit. So now I just have this little swatch of flowers, and the only purpose, other than to add just a tiny bit of some other color, is to hide where that vine goes into the log. So again, I hold it there and then push it in so that the glue makes good contact, and there we go. Voila. Number 2 is done. It looks good from both directions. You got the fern as the main element from this direction. Got the vine as the main element from this direction. You can see flowers. You can see flowers, well, at least a little bit. And then you can always do, you know, inside here, it's one of these days I'm going to find I'm either going to figure out how to make, or I'm going to find a purveyor of little mushrooms. And then you're going to see me go nuts, because I'm going to put little mushrooms all over these logs. But for the time being, this will do. And it leaves me some creative space for later. And, all right, the last log is going to largely get the same treatment. I'm going to place the fern first. And I think I'm just going to put it somewhere near the middle on top, so that and there's my phone. Okay, here we are back again. So here's the log. So I just made a hole in the top for the fern. So I'm going to try to get the fern in there, see if it'll go. You have to be kind of careful with these, because these the fiddleheads for the fern are wire, and they have a tendency to strip the paint off of them. And I will probably at some point come back and add a little bit of light colored paint to the fern leaves, just to make them look a little more interesting, a little less plastic. But for now, this will do. So I just check. I can decide how I want the fern to lay. That looks good. And then we just do the same thing. I could either put some glue directly on the fern. The hole's a little big, so I think I'm going to put the glue directly on the fern. There we go. Plug this in. It'll remain mobile for a little while. There we go. That's perfect. I like that. So, you can tell everything's sticking to me now. So there's the fern. I think, so we have some interesting stuff here we didn't have on the other one. I like that little cove in there. So I think for this one we're gonna set this one up for more of a fall scene than a summer scene. So I keep this little bag of this is just fall scenery foam. Again, you can get this from any maker, you know, whatever you want to do. So I'm going to take a little chunk of this, and I'm going to experiment to see what I like. So I'm just kind of cram that in there. It's not glued or anything. I'm just trying to get a feel for what it looks like. All right, so there's the orange and the yellow. Or I could go with something like a dark red. Okay, that's a bad job of cramming in, but I think I like the orange yellow better. So this stuff is interesting, and it's it can be a little tricky to work with. I'm going to use the white glue for this, for the same reason I used it for the moss, in that it kind of reaches up and grabs the material better than the super glue does. And then when it dries as a thicker. So I'm just going to, now we're not going to wait. We're going to keep working on the model here once I put this in. So I just put a glob of white glue in there. And then I fill around. And then this is basically sponge material. So if you press on it, it will adhere the the white glue. And you know, I might take a little bit of that red. Just a little bitty bit. And there's, I can see a little glue right there. So I'm just going to put a little bit of that red right there. Okay, and so when that's done drying, that should be fine. It looks like a little shrub that was growing in there, or some forest plant. And unfortunately, I do have different colors of flowers. Unfortunately, the only flowers I have with me right at the moment are white. I don't know what happened to all my... I have so many yellow flowers, I don't know what to do with. Also, I have this grass. Now, this grass is kind of fall-like, too. It's green, but it looks like it's seen better days. So, we're going to get back out the little dot of super glue here. And I'm just going to look for bare patches where I think I can put a little tuft of grass. I don't want to overdo this, but there's a little spot right there. And these will be more subtle, so they may not jump out at you, but that's okay. They're kind of, you know, I want them for theme and feel more than anything else. There we go. We've got a, maybe I can put a little tuft of grass down in here. That's a good one. All right, so again, doesn't make a huge difference, but adds a little bit. Now, I do want a little bit of color, and I do love my flowers, so I'm gonna put a batch of flowers in that spot right there for starters. I have some huge batches of flowers left on my little sheet here. So why don't we take that one? Okay, that's gonna need fresh glue. There we go. A little more than I wanted, but that's okay, because I'm just touching it to it. See, if I put that huge blob of glue on the object, it would have made it different. Oh, see, that's much better. Very nice. Maybe I'll put a little one, if I can find a little one. Yeah, it's kind of shoddy looking. Let's look for something a little nicer. There we go. Even has a flat edge. Never underestimate the uses for a flat edge. All right. And I hold it there for a second and release. Here we go. Okay, from this side, this looks really good. Let's double check the other side. It looks pretty good. It's a little more bare on this side, but that's just fine. Okay, so let us set our stuff aside. Let me clean my table, and let's see what we made today. We made a fall kind of a thing, a spring or summer kind of a thing, and we made a nice tropical piece. And these are all, you know, very inexpensive. I mean, obviously the wood is free. And the other bits are things I've had laying around that I bought years ago. Or they're leftovers, you know. So I had a bunch, I had those 3 stray bamboo pieces left over from working on my market board, for example. And I bought the ferns for yet another board, and here they are adorning these. So then I'll take some light green and I'll do a quick dry brush. Maybe I'll do one now just to show you. Sorry for bashing the camera around, guys. There we go. Random brush. So, get some light green on there. Hit a paper towel a little bit to get the worst of it off. And it brings out the detail in the molding very nicely. And only takes a few seconds. Get the arcs on the fiddleheads. There we go. Doesn't take much. There's no reason to kill yourself over this. It's a plastic plant. However, now that we've given a little bit of highlight and a little bit of depth, it looks a lot less like a plastic plant. And then once I get it sprayed with some dull coat, which I always do, regardless of what I'm doing, that will help take the shine out of the fern. So there you go. How to make some easy, simple things with whatever bits you have left over from your basing. If you don't have bits like this left over from your basing, shame on you. You need to get some, because really good bases are definitely the way to go. So let us once again use my whip of Zuba. You can see how he looks in and amidst the various and sundry pieces of terrain. There we go. Ta-da! Well, thank you for joining me on Gitsapalooza, and there will be more of these hobby time videos coming up very shortly. I have some other things I want to show off, and maybe give you some hints of things you can do on your own. Thanks. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye. Just wanted to do this video before I lost all my natural light. So this is the table I was making the bamboo piece for. This is my market table. I've been going a little nuts on scatter terrain. But, so there you can see the piece. And there it is in the context of the rest of the table. And then we just take a quick zoom around. We've got some little yaitai with sake and rice jars and a little oven and a little water mill I have to make water for, but it's mainly a town building. My paper lantern objectives, piles and piles of goods all over the place, providing cover. Got fish that fits the fishmonger. And we have our persimmons right there. And another yaitai, again with more goodies on the inside. So that's my market. Oh, let's back up. Let's take one last look. So you can see those little half logs are handy. I've even got another one way over here, just a little bitty tiny one. Can be moved around as needed. So they're a neat little piece of terrain. They're handy. You can use them in just about any setting. And they're easy to make, as you can see. And you can be as creative and spend as much or as little money as you want. All right. Thank you for joining us on Gitsapalooza.